What's in between verse 3 and verse 4? Interaction. A Selah, right? And if you have a footnote, it might tell you a little bit about that. And every Bible usually says, we don't know exactly what this means. It might have some kind of a musical term. It might be like a rest in music. So generally, a lot of Hebraists and Hebrew scholars will say it means pause, rest, or reflect. Now, most of the times, we skip over those pretty quickly. I'm guilty of that all the time. But I think this is something that's so important, especially here in Psalm 54. Verse 1, he starts to pray. Verse 2, he says, God, hear my prayer. Verse 3, he points out where his trouble is coming from. And then pause for a second. Pause and take a breath. Why is that important? Because sometimes we do this. We pray. We ask God to hear our prayer. We think about where our trouble is coming from. And I don't know about you, but when I start thinking about where the trouble is coming from, I get mad and I get angry and what am I going to do? And it just builds and builds and builds because it becomes so emotionally ingrained that I can't control that. But David says, pause for a second. Instead of allowing your emotions to take over, take a breath and look at verse 4. Behold, God is my helper. So instead of allowing his emotions just to well up, he pauses for a second and says, okay, I know how I feel, but what do I know? Because sometimes our emotions can drive us so much that our mind becomes clouded and we don't even think clearly anymore. So instead of being driven just by how I feel, Selah, take a breath, breathe, rest, pause. Verse 4, what do I know about God in spite of how I feel in this situation? David says, God is my helper. What else do I know? He's the upholder or the sustainer of my life, of my very soul. So the anticipation of deliverance is David recognizing, in spite of the situation, what I know about God changes how I deal with it. These people have turned me over to Saul. Saul is trying to kill me. If that's not going to give you anxiety, nothing is. Having somebody hunting you down like a dog. But he says, God is my helper. Meaning God doesn't leave me alone. When we get to the New Testament, when Jesus is talking about getting ready to ascend up to the Father, what does he say? He says, I'm going to send the helper, the paraclete, the Spirit. Remember, we often think about that word paraclete. The word para, we know that because we use it all the time. A paralegal. What does a paralegal do? A paralegal comes alongside a lawyer and helps them out. In schools, a parapro will come in. What does a parapro do? They come alongside a teacher to help them out. And the paraclete, the Spirit, the helper, he comes alongside us. He's with us. So we don't do anything by ourselves. When David says, God is my helper, he's saying, God is right here with me. He has not left me. He himself is getting me through this situation. He's with me. He's taking care of me. He doesn't leave me alone. I also wrote in an article recently this idea that knowing God's presence gets us through so much. You know, sometimes when we're going through trouble, when we're going through pain, God doesn't necessarily take away the trouble or the pain, but he promises us that he's right there with us. In the same way that when you take a child to get a shot, man, I hated getting shots. At one point, they had to strap me down to boards because I had to fight the doctor. I don't want to get a shot. So when a child is anxious about getting a shot, but a parent knows this is what you need to be healthy, this is what you need so you don't get sick, they lovingly take them there. And they have to go through that trouble, and they have to go through that pain. But the mom will bend down on her knee and say, Mommy's here. The pain doesn't go away. The situation doesn't change. But the recognition of nearness changes the way the child goes through that situation. There's a breath of fresh air for a moment. Why? Because I know that no matter what, even the scary doctor with his giant needle, Mommy's here and Mommy won't let anything bad happen to me. God is our helper, David says.